The items that you will need when you're on the wheel before you get started is you're going to need to make sure you grab a black bat. These will be found in the corner sink area and wire baskets. You want to make sure that your spot has a wooden rib tool, a needle tool, a sponge, and then access to a wire cutter. Something like this. They should be sitting every 2 to 3 wheels, so we'll have to share them. And you will need a large sponge for cleaning at the end. Day 1, my only concern is that you are able to clean your wheel properly. And we're going to be going on a schedule of student A and student B. So today, student B will be cleaning because they'll be on the wheel last. All right, so to get started, after you've wedged your clay and reminding you that it is going to take several days to become proficient in wedging your clay, I want you to then pat it into a nice round ball. All right, and then what you're going to want to do is you want to place your clay in the center of your wheel, and that's going to just help you to get centered right off the bat. So you don't need to throw it from super high. You're just going to place it basically kind of eyeball where you see it centered, and then you'll just smack it and tap it down. And then I also want you to use your hands to pat and smack and make sure it's nicely, evenly shaped, like so. You do not want it to be lopsided when you get started. Then the next thing you're going to need to do is you're going to need to turn on your wheel. But before you even turn on your wheel, I want you to make sure that your actual stool is completely touching your wheel so that your legs can wrap tightly around the splash pan. Then you'll go ahead and turn on your wheel, which should be on the right side of the wheel, and then you'll have your pedal here, which to press it down will make your wheel spin, and then to slow it down, you'll press back on it. The thing about wheels and the pedal is that it's not like a car. You can pick a speed and then take your foot off of the wheel or the pedal so that you can keep that speed without changing your speed as you're working, because a lot of times you'll be concentrating that you won't be paying attention to what your foot is doing. So we're going to get our wheels started. And another thing is, notice my hands are dry. The only thing that's wet right now is the clay. And once I have it centered on my wheel and I am right up over my clay, I want you to kind of think about placing your heart over your clay so that you know you're nice and cozy right over the clay. Then you're going to go ahead and get your hands wet, and you're going to take the soft parts of your palms and you're going to anchor your arms, your elbows. They're either going to be anchored on your legs. Maybe they'll make sense to anchor them on your splash pan. You just want to make sure that your arms are stabilized onto your body as then you place your hands onto your clay, and I'm just equally squeezing both sides. And my clay is already fairly centered because I placed it centered on the wheel. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just squeeze it up just a little bit, and that's going to make it go taller. Then I'm going to take my non-dominant hand, my left hand, in this part of my palm. So I want everybody to kind of look at your hand and pay attention to this part of your palm. And then I like to anchor my elbow into my hip bone. So I'm going to press that towards the center. So I'm pushing towards the center, which is making my clay get taller. Then I'm going to take my dominant hand, the flat part of my palm, and I'm going to press down as I press in, equal pressure, and notice how my hands are not moving. If your hands move, the clay will continue to move and it won't get centered. So I'm going to come off, grab a little more water, and I'm going to again squeeze up just a little bit, and then again taking this part of my palm, I'm going to press towards the center as I press down, and then I'm right up over the center of my clay. And then it's a matter of just holding your hands still. And you'll know you're centered when you can place your hand on the side of your clay and it rides steady and it does not go in and out. Another really important tip that I want you to remember, that while you are pressing and kind of coning in, is what happens when you press together. And then I'm going to press down and in. And once I believe I'm centered, the most important thing you need to do to keep your clay centered is to take the pressure out of your hands and then slowly take your hands off of the clay. If you release fast, you're going to end up pushing your clay out of center, and then you are off centered. All right, and then the next step will be to find that centered belly button of the clay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take both my hands and ride alongside the clay, and then with my thumbs here, so notice how my hands are touching, my thumbs are just going to press down just to push the center up, just enough. I'm going to show you with the camera here so you can see what I just created. And this is kind of creating the belly button. So see how you see that very center there. So that part is where I'm going to take my thumbs and push straight down to dig my well. I'm showing you all of the steps today only for fun, and then starting tomorrow we're going to break it down one step at a time. So now that I found that belly button, I'm just going to get a little bit more water. Notice my hands are touching again, and my thumbs are actually going to press towards one another, and then we're going to press straight down. And keeping a nice, firm, steady hand so that I keep my well that I'm digging nice and centered. And then I'm going to come off. So now I've got this opening, which I will show you from above. Showing you that. But the next step that I need to do is I need to check the depth of my floor. So using the needle tool, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just press to the center with my needle tool until I'm touching the bat, and then I'm going to run my finger down until I'm touching the floor of the clay. Then I'll pull that up, and then that shows me how thick my floor is, and that's a good depth right there. So I can set my needle tool down, and then I'm going to go on to the next step, which is I'm going to open up, which mine is pretty open. I don't really necessarily need to open it much further than this, but if your well is narrow, you're going to need to open it so that you can fit your rib tool in. And again, reminding you, each of these steps we will revisit one at a time each day throughout this week. So I just opened it up enough. I'm going to show you what that looks like. So I opened it up with my fingers, and how I did that was I took my middle finger, and notice how my hands are always touching just to stable each other, and I set it down onto the floor of the clay, and then I just pulled straight back towards my body. Now I'm going to take my rib tool here, dip it in the water because I want to compress the floor. So I'm taking that flat edge and I'm just holding it straight up and down, and then I'm going to pull it straight into the interior wall of my clay. And then I'm going to come off, and you'll see I'm going to lose a little bit of clay there. But now I've got a nice 90-degree angle on the interior of my clay. So I'll show you that one more time. So you can see I have a nice 90-degree angle in there. And that's going to allow me to pull my walls straight up. And I always say, centering is the most important, but pulling the walls up is the hardest. So the next step is to pull the walls up. And I'm just going to show you this. You watch with your eyes. We will be specifically going through these techniques in the future coming days. So we're going to place, I like to do the knuckle approach, where I take with my dominant hand, thumb wraps under my pointer finger, so I create a 90-degree angle, and that sits flat on the bat. And then I'm just going to use my middle finger and ring finger. As you see, my left thumb crosses over, so both hands are connected. I'm going to slow my speed down, and all I'm simply doing is pinching my fingers towards one another as I guide both hands up towards my face, going nice and slow, coming up towards the top, letting out the pressure in my fingers, and then coming off just like a butterfly. And then what I would want to do with that, that's called a pull. So I did one pull, but now I want to compress my lip. And then I'll kind of feel how thick this is. I could probably do one more little pull, but I didn't really take too much clay, probably took under a pound, so I can't really make my walls much taller than this. All right. Okay. Now, eventually, we'll be practicing with 1 pound, and eventually you'll be moving up, graduating up to 1.5 pounds so that you can get a taller form. So now I'm ready to show you kind of the interior. So I'm going to take my sponge, make sure it's nice and damp. I'm going to get that excess water out of the bottom, kind of getting that nice and clean. And now you're going to take that wire cutter. You're going to wrap it tight around your fingers. Nice and tight. I like to wrap it a couple times around my pointer finger, and then I take my thumbs and I set it on the opposite side of myself so that it's nice and flat on the form or on the bat. And then I'm going to pull it straight back towards myself, and then I'm also going to cut it in half so I can just show you the interior walls so that we can better understand how did I do with the pulling up. So I'm going to pull this away, and then I'm going to bring this to the camera to show you the walls. You can see there's a little bit of thickness left at the bottom. I probably could have done one more pull to get this to just be a little bit taller, but really I don't want to make my walls any thinner than 1/4 inch. That is our golden rule measurement. So what I want for you to do today is just have fun. Try to remember what I showed you. But the next step here that I'm going to be showing you is the cleaning of the wheel, which is the most important these first couple days. So stay tuned for that video.